the art of Francisco Goya, the Spanish counterpart to David. David mirrors man's noble soul. Goya descends into the subterranean depths. Goya in the 1790s is the moment when the artist doesn't just paint what he's told, he also paints his own imagination, the unasked for, the uncomfortable, the unwanted.
We saw how the big statement of David's art is that we, without kings and religion, can be free to be more fully ourselves. There's a new world coming, and reason is going to usher it in. Goya, who wants that new world as much as David, shows freedom going negative, and negativity becoming an all-enveloping darkness. Goya says, yes, religion can be changed. Yes, the idea of God can be made more democratic. And yes, we can use knowledge and reason to know ourselves more truly. But the truth is, unreason will always come back.
How did he get here? It's important to see the contrast from what Goya was, a painter of colourful scenes, picnics in the country for the king's craftsmen to weave into royal tapestries, to what he became in his mid-40s, Mr. Darkness, painting hell. The style change came after severe illness in the early 1790s coincided with a sudden end to political hopes. It might have been polio or syphilis or lead poisoning, but at the time David was in prison in Paris, in Madrid, Goya was recuperating from an unknown illness that left him deaf for life. During his illness, Spain declared holy war on France because of the execution of the French king by the French revolutionaries. Goya believes in the revolution. Spain is stuck in the past, he thinks. Spain is reactionary. It doesn't want freedom. In images mixing reality and fantasy, Goya shows Spain dominated by traditions that stultify humanity. The clergy feeding ignorance to the peasants. The Holy Inquisition punishing free thought. The dumb rich riding the helpless poor.
Goya and his circle dream of revolutionary values coming to Spain. Maybe the great leader Napoleon will bring them in when he brings his troops in. Out will go the old Spanish superstition and conservatism and the heavy weight of the church. But instead of enlightenment and reason, Napoleon's eventual arrival in Spain causes Spain to turn even more brutal, even more irrational. And the old oppressive heaviness comes back even heavier. The dream turns to a nightmare.
Goya's political worldview shattered, socially isolated, because he had a buzzing in his head at all times and was only able to communicate by sign language, he leads a double life. He paints official portraits, but also private visions, monsters who stand for despair at humanity, a wandering colossus of mindless violence. Is it Napoleon? Goya doesn't say. Cruelty and violence aren't new in Europe, but the wars started by Napoleon were in the name of new civilised values, equality, brotherhood, freedom. It turns out you can only get them through torture and murder. David's clarity, we are good. Goya's murkiness, we don't know what we are. Goya wanders through the king's art collection, getting visual inspiration from the past, Spanish style, vague, hazy, dark forms. Goya's take on the Spanish tradition is to make vagueness weird. Even when he paints the bosses, it's unnerving. His portrait of the royal family of Carlos IV, completed in 1800, radiates unease. And yet the bosses themselves don't complain. They think, yes, we are in charge. It's an unease that only comes clear for us in our modern age. Goya is a time bomb of modern anxiety. We're put together very shakily. We can easily be unravelled.
The clothes of the royals shimmer like David's painting of the crowning of Napoleon in Notre Dame shimmers. But where David is glorifying, Goya is weirdly frank. The faces of the royals are not remotely impressive. They're plain and homely, even ugly. Their eyes are unnoble. We see a weird call-out of uglies who seem almost like phantoms. That space they're standing in is all blurs. Goya paints the royal family, he works for the royal family, he's in the orbit of the royal family, but at the same time, he's separated from them. He puts himself in the picture, but the effect of it is to make him separated from them even more. Surrounded by shadow, it's not like he's reverent towards their majesty, he's distanced from their strangeness. Goya paints in the great tradition of Spanish art, fuzzy-edged, vague, dark. But with Goya, there's a new psychological element that springs that visual pleasure into visceral, disturbing, delicious unpleasure. A grand visual shudder across the canvas that monumentalizes not royalty, but unhinged, shadowy dread.
Goya is a liberal progressive, a man of the Enlightenment, but he doesn't just deplore humanity's dark side, he's the great tireless explorer of it, the Captain Cook of the oceans of the monstrous that is everyone's unconscious. Goya becomes the prophet of the new scariness about human destiny that our modern age has. He foresees the modern death drive, the realization that we can destroy ourselves, we are wolves, we devour ourselves. In 1819, when he was 73, Goya bought a house on the outskirts of Madrid and day after day painted scenes direct on the plaster walls. A dog in the mud. Was it sinking in quicksand or struggling to get up? Is it civilization giving in to despair or struggling to get out of it? Yes, we are brutal. Do we give up hope then? Do we hate ourselves so much an old man eats his own children?
The haunted, furtive, guilty, hopeless look in the eyes is what sums up Goya's darkness. It's his idea of the inner self being freed to come out, to be faced up to. And the impossibility of us ever admitting that we are that it's not God who hurls sinners into hell, that hell is something we make for ourselves. We hurl ourselves into hell just by being ourselves. Goya was in his 70s. They're called the Black Paintings. It's not his title. He didn't call them anything. He ate his meals looking at them in between stints of gardening. He went to bed staring at them at night, and he woke up in the morning to them. The mad parade, the mad leading the mad and getting madder. Witches, killers, devourers, and processions of the depraved. Old doddery Goya, in from the garden, paints men banging each other with cudgels, standing in a swamp. It's the world. The men are giants. It's the new regime, mindless banging forever.